Oh, Bobby Richards?
We're gonna change out a few things.
Right.
So Bobby and Alessandra, is this your first meeting of the ad hoc on this subject? Or
No, it's not.
It's our first public meeting. We took a field trip in the fall, and I'm going to mention that I've got a little presentation coming up once we get started.
Nope. Wait till 4 o'clock. I'm not 4. Oh yeah, it's seconds away. I know. No, it says 4 o'clock. I'm serious about this stuff. No. Well, I'm glad to see so many people here. I didn't think there were so many people. That's awesome.
There we go, now it says 4. If anybody cares.
Welcome, everybody, and thank you for coming out to this. And it's all about you, all of you. We want to hear your thoughts, and we're going to have. Oh, here we go. Got it. Hi, welcome everybody. Like I said, this is all about you. We want to hear your thoughts on this, and what we're going to do is I've got a little bit of a presentation we can start off with, and then we're going to hear from the police, and then we're going to hear from all of you to get your thoughts, and then Bobby and I will come back to council probably with 1 to 2 recommendations so that the whole council can act on this. Do you have any comments before I start the slideshow?
No, thanks for coming, everybody. This is exciting to see so many people here for an ad hoc committee. Normally, we don't get this many. But I think it is an important subject, and there's lots of various opinions of it in the city. So it'll be interesting to hear what you have to say, and also what the chief has to say, and what the chief recommends. And so, yeah, we'll be going back to council with a recommendation. Just understand that we're going back with a recommendation, not a motion or any of that. We're just going to say, what we've learned, because the other city council members haven't had this much in-depth study on these cameras. So we can go back and say, what we've learned, this is, what we recommend. And it could be several different items, or several different recommendations, one recommendation, whatever it may be. So with that, I'll turn it over to the chief.
Oh, actually, I'm going to do my presentation and then
sorry.
go to the chief. Okay. So just to get started, to tell you a little bit of background. Can everyone hear me okay? The original 6... Did you want to do lights? Okay. Okay. So the original 6 license plate reader cameras at the perimeter entrances and exits to Carmel were authorized by the City Council in July of 2018 for $110,000. These were placed high up on PG&E power poles and use electricity to run, and were installed in late 2019. The contract for the license plate reader cameras is with a company called Surveillance Grid. At the April 4th, 2023 meeting, the City Council passed the consent agenda, which had the city administrator sign a 2-year agreement with the Flock company. Under the agreement, the city leases 24 automated license plate reader cameras from Flock, in addition to 6 software overlays onto the existing city cameras at the perimeter. This total of 30 cost $77,900 for year 1 and $69,000 for the following year to maintain the program. The 24 new Flock cameras were installed throughout our 1 square mile village with a population of 3,200 in July of 2023. As a comparison to other cities in our area, Pacific Grove has 12 Flock cameras. The city has a low crime rate and is 4 square miles with a population of 15,000. Hollister has 15 Flock cameras installed in a 1 square mile high crime area of the city, which covers a total of 8 square miles and has a population of nearly 42,000. As there had not been a public discussion about the cameras and no map was provided of the proposed locations, there were significant concerns in the community over the process. The implementation of the program was halted, and the ad hoc committee was formed shortly afterwards. The committee took a tour of all 30 locations in the fall of 2023. Here are some questions the committee raised and what we are here today to hear from you. Do we want to keep all 30 of these cameras? Do we want them in residential areas as well as downtown? Do we want them in the downtown only, along with the existing perimeter of the town? Do we just want to go back to the original 6 upgraded at the key entrances and exits? Do these cameras detract from the aesthetics of our village and create visual clutter? Do these cameras invade our privacy? The flock cameras have been installed with solar panels on standalone poles in the residential areas, or they've been attached to existing light fixtures in the downtown. And coming up, I'm going to have some photos. The first one is the residential district on Monteverde and 8th, and the second one is in the commercial district on San Carlos between Ocean and 7th. Oops, where did our photos go? There we go. Okay. That's it for my presentation. Thanks. So, Chief?
Can I stop? Do you happen to have the information? This on?
Yeah, hold it down for a second. My green light will turn on.
You happen to have the information that we gave the chief about what we both knew that we really didn't like? Like, we know that we really didn't like the standalone poles. Remember, we gave some direction with that?
Yeah, I don't think we ever wrote it down. We just sort of informally, but that was the previous chief, too. That was Chief Watkins.
You don't remember us saying anything?
I remember we did talk about the aesthetics and the look and what we don't like about them, like the poles, the solar panels, the size of the box, things like that. So yeah, I'm aware of it. Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit about that in our presentation, which we can give, which I think it's important for us to explain really what these cameras are and how they work, because I think that's part of the confusion is what do we have and what just popped up and what's going on. So let us do our presentation. Maybe it answers some of these questions. Maybe it informs you a little bit about these cameras, and then we can start the discussion and answer any questions anybody has. We're here to help facilitate this and move forward. I have a really hard time sitting here talking, looking at the screen, so I'm going to sit here and talk kind of to the screen and to you as best I can.
We looked at the screen. No.
If you've been on these ad hocs, you're getting used to this, so. Thank you, Nova. So we're going to talk a little bit about, obviously, the flock camera system. I brought Sergeant Michael Bruno here, who's been here since these were installed. He has very good working knowledge of them. He can give you some examples of how they work. So I don't want to steal his thunder. He's going to talk a little bit more. But again, introduction to flock and then addressing the community concerns. We can talk about privacy, the number of cameras, the locations of the cameras, and then the aesthetics as we talked about. So without further ado, you want to take over on this? All right. And that's your forward button right there.
Okay. So Flock is a company that's been around since 2017. What Flock is, it's license plate reading technology. So the camera will snap photos of license plates as it goes by the camera, and it stores it on the cloud. Most license plates will never come to our attention, will never be brought to our attention unless a crime has been committed and we have a license plate that we could search it for. So currently Flock is being used in 42 states in the US and 4,000 plus cities. So it's grown gradually since 2017 and is becoming more common. For the Monterey County and Peninsula area, these are all the agencies that are currently using Flock. Pacific Grove has 12 cameras. Salinas has 72 cameras. Marina has 20. Seaside has 25 plus a 1 mile gunshot detection. So essentially that is if it hears the sounds of gunshots or believes it is, it notifies law enforcement that, hey, gunshots came from this area, and then they could start going to that area to see if it was a false alarm, a backfire, or a gunshot. Sand City has 10. Monterey just got 34 approved last month. Soledad is getting 6 of them, and then Monterey County, the DA's office, unincorporated Monterey County has 60 throughout the county. So how Flock works, I kind of just briefly explained that. So, for example, if a vehicle is reported stolen, it's entered into CLUTS, our law enforcement database, that license plate 123456 is a stolen vehicle. That vehicle drives by one of our Flock cameras, and our Flock camera captures that image of that plate. It notifies us, hey, stolen vehicle 123456 is at St. Carlos and Ocean driving southbound. And then we could start going that way and looking for that vehicle. It also is stolen vehicles, amber and silver alert, so missing kids, missing elderly. And we can also manually enter license plates in if somebody reports that this car broke into their house and they have a license plate, we can enter that. So then when it comes back, we could look for the perpetrator or the person that committed the crime. So this is an actual example here. This is from Gilroy. You want to use one of our own local ones. So this is what we see when a Flock camera gets a hit. So this is a stolen vehicle. So as you see, this vehicle was reported stolen by the registered owner. It drove by a Flock camera in Gilroy, and I blocked out the license plate not to show exactly which car it is because it's been recovered. So this notification is sent to the police department via email or text message, whatever the individual officer that's on duty wants. So as you can see, license plate, takes a photo of the license plate and it tells us the direction that it's going and the reason. California Stolen Vehicle System, what SVS stands for, and it says stolen vehicle. If it was a missing person would pop up so we can go look for that missing person, or if it was a burglar, it would say burglar underneath there. And then on the right-hand side, it obviously has a map, and then it tells us the direction that vehicle is traveling in. So this is a local case. So Seaside Police Department calls us and says that somebody's wanted for sexually assaulting a child, and the person works here in Carmel. They know who it is, they have his license plate, but they don't know where he's at. So they asked us to manually enter this license plate in our Flock reader, and the person drove into town at Monteverde and 6 going southbound at 11:30 a.m. on the 29th, and that's the images that it provides us. We went and looked for him, we located him, and he was arrested and turned over to Seaside PD, the originating jurisdiction that the crime occurred. So that's just one example of when Flock would be used. This is another one that some of you may have heard about. On May 1st, the van down in Carmel Valley, this originated again in Seaside. A white van was carjacked. The owner of the car was carjacked, robbed. The individual went and burglarized a home with the person inside. It was an elderly couple inside the home, and left in this van. Same thing, they put an all points bulletin, everybody look out for this van. It's entered into the Flock system. The car drove into our town, which led us to relay that information to the outside agencies, and the guy was eventually arrested. Just another example, that's at Rio and Lesueur. So privacy concerns. So what Flock does and what it does not do. So Flock is not facial recognition technology in any way. It doesn't capture human beings. It only captures license plates. The data is retained for only 30 days. So once that vehicle drives by and it snaps a photo of that license plate, it's held in the system for 30 days and it's not restored. It's deleted after that 30 days. So essentially, it's used just for immediate apprehension or identification of suspects. Manual searches, as I explained, can be done for license plates only if we have determined that that license plate or that vehicle has been involved in some type of crime. We can't just look up somebody out of curiosity. We don't just do it if for traffic violations. So traffic violations are completely separate. Somebody reported a speeding vehicle. We're not going to enter that into Flock. This is simply for apprehending criminals and criminal activity, not for traffic-related stuff. The cameras do not record live, so they're not live feeds. We can't watch the video. It simply snaps a photograph of the license plate. That's it.
Michael, hold there.
Yes.
You said the manual searches, so it remember, it captures every license plate going 30 days it stores that information. We cannot just go on and say, I wonder what this person's doing, and look it up and see if you went through that stop sign. It has to be attached to a crime and a crime report, and we have to log that on the system itself. That's an important thing. We cannot just randomly check people. For the last 40 years, we've been able to drive around our patrol cars and read off a license plate and do a criminal check on anybody. We can say, this car's registration is valid, the driver is this person, check that person to see if they have warrants or anything like that. We already have that capability. Oh, I have to start over? No. Okay. So we have that ability doing it over the radio through our dispatch. This just takes out the dispatch part. It's already running it and it's doing all that information, but we have no access to it unless there's a crime attached to it, if that makes sense.
So basically what you're saying is you cannot check anybody's license plate randomly. It has to be attached to a crime.
Through the camera system, yes.
And I'll get to the transparency portal. I think it's on the next slide, and I'll go into that a little bit further. So transparency portal, it's on our website, the city website, under police and fire. And the transparency portal allows the public or anybody who's interested to look at what the searches are that have been done over the last 30 days. So if myself, Sergeant Bruno, does a manual search, I'm looking for a burglary suspect, it'll tell you the reason why I searched that car. It'll tell you the date and time that I did it. It's not going to obviously put out the whole license plate, but it'll tell you why we're doing searches and what the reason is. And in the last 30 days, we've done about 29 searches as of 5/14 when the chief and I made this PowerPoint.
Are we able to pull the transparency portal up right here so everybody can see it?
Yes.
Go to the city website.
Yes.
Did that result in anything?
I'm sorry?
Did that result in anything? Those searches that you did it result in any solved mysteries?
We keep a log, and there's a log online of all the cases. I don't know exactly, I don't have specific cases for you, but I do have a log of some cases that it has helped us solve.
You can talk about today while we're...
Yeah, I have one today. So today, one of our business owners had his car stolen just outside of our jurisdiction where he lives, and the stolen car drove through town yesterday. And we looked for it yesterday. It passed the camera on Monteverdi 6, but we couldn't find it. So knowing that that car was down there somewhere, we ended up finding it this morning. Someone was driving the stolen car. We were able to arrest him and return the car to the owner of it.
Is this a computer system? Is it how, like, where is this? Is it in the cloud or is it a system that's on a computer that you log into with a special password? I understand what's going on. I just don't understand how it's going on.
Yeah, so the company Flock stores it all in their secured cloud. So every search manually enters to the transparency portal why we did that search. So it's done manually through Flock, so we can't manipulate that or change that in any way. It's done automatically. But yes, to answer your question, it is in the cloud through the Flock company.
Do you get it off of a computer? I mean, how do you get the message from Seaside that, I'm trying to understand how this works.
Can you ask your question into the mic?
How does this work? I'm trying to understand. I understand what it does, but how you get a call from Seaside and then you go into your computer and you log into Flock and then you get the information and then whatever you do, you record on their computer, on the system that they have? And is Flock the only company, or are there other companies doing the same thing?
Great question. So to answer your question, it's internet-based. So yes, we would log into the Flock's we call it Flock portal through the internet, log in, and then do that manual entry. It's similar to a website, secured website, of course. And I'm sorry, your second question again? Oh, any other companies?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if there's any other companies. This is the most known. This is the company that's most used and well known. I'm not quite sure if there's any other companies that currently offer this technology.
I just want to make sure, is that clear? Because it's kind of muddled for me as well. I think what happens,
So this is a computer system that agencies, if they have Flock, have access to. So if in the instance where they had the kidnapping and the carjacking take place in Seaside, Seaside went out and took a report, they entered that information into the computer system, and we share our system with Seaside. And so when it hit on our cameras, it alerted us. Hey, this is a vehicle that's wanted in the area for kidnapping and carjacking. So it pops up on our system saying that's a wanted vehicle. So we can then initiate the stop, and we know why. So it's not just an officer making a stop on a random car. We know why it needs to be stopped.
So when you get the call,
they don't get a call.
you get the computer alert, and then you go into your system to check the cameras to see if that, then how do you do that?
Yeah, it alerts us, and then you're right, we look at the camera and it shows us the vehicle on the plate, tells it where it is and what direction it's heading. That's why multiple cameras are beneficial, because it can tell you where it's traveling through town, instead of just hitting in one spot and you have no idea where it is in your town.
Because I'm getting it. So Seaside puts in a stolen vehicle, numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That car just happens to come through Carmel, and since it's in the Flock system, our Flock camera goes ding, 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 and calls you. And then you say, oh, on Monteverdi and 6, there's a stolen car, and Seaside entered it 3 hours ago. It's a stolen, it's this, 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 and then they can make the stop, detain the person, and then the Seaside PD can come over and arrest them. Is that correct?
So you don't have to search for it. It comes up automatically because that's the computer system. That's this Flock system.
Because they all work.
Correct, we don't search for it at all.
And that's real time.
Real time. In the,
Earlier you said it wasn't real time, but that alert is right now.
correct.
So if you have an officer 3 blocks away, he's on it.
Correct. Yeah. Prior to this type of technology, we would get what's known as a be on the lookout over the radio, be on the lookout for a white van with this plate, and you have to try to memorize that or write it down. Then you're looking for that vehicle. If you get multiple be on the lookouts throughout the day, you have a list called a hot sheet of vehicles that you're interested in seeing and looking for. This takes all that out of play. We don't have to broadcast stuff over the radio. It just hits on a plate, sends up that sheet when we look at it, and it says this guy's wanted for whatever, or this person. Yep.
Is the presentation over? Because I have a lot of questions too, but I just want to hear it. I want to make sure I'd like to hear what he has to say.
Yep.
If that's okay.
We want to make sure that this point is clear, though, as far as the transparency portal. We don't have carte blanche just to search people. That's not what this is about. This is about alerting us to criminals in our area or criminal activity that is coming into our area. That's an important aspect of this. We're not searching people. We can do that anytime we want. If we want to just call out a license plate and check people, we can do that. That law allows us to do that. This system just alerts us to some vehicle that is wanted or a crime. That's entered on now. Correct.
There are other specialized applications that I've seen in other communities when I do ride-alongs down south, like near the border. They track license plates that have come over the border multiple times a day, and if they're on, and they're reading all the cars on both sides of the freeway, and if they see that car and they know it's gone over the border 3 times that day, they go and get them. So it's not just a single instance like this. It could be more sophisticated if you need that. So it can be actually very useful in terms of using that data as an application.
I have a question about the software.
Can we keep going with the presentation?
Yeah, can you hold it, Andy? Thanks.
I have a question about the transparency.
Yep.
I just didn't want to interrupt your presentation.
So when you have these, I've heard that the Flock transparency portals also allow you to enter a undetermined cause for the alert. So when you say you cannot view anything unless there's a crime associated, is there an entry type that allows you to say, we don't know what the crime is, or let me put it a different way, what stops you from entering a crime and then looking things up? I don't understand the cannot look it up. I mean, the transparency portal could be overridden, it sounds like. It sounds like you could put any cause, you could put we don't know quite the cause.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I think what you're referring to is using it as a search engine to search whatever we want. We don't use it for that purpose.
No, I think when you said that you have to, in order to access, sorry. When you said in order to access, like, so Seaside calls you with a crime, the white van, et cetera, you have to put in that it's a crime in order to coordinate the cameras and start looking for that van, right?
No.
No. Seaside has to do it.
Yes.
Okay. So when you say nothing can be looked at unless it has a crime associated with it, what are you referring to? And is that overridable, or can you enter the wrong crime, enter something that's not quite a crime? I don't know what the crime is yet, but I still want to look. What were you talking about there?
I could talk about that.
Why don't you take it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So reasonable suspicion in law enforcement terms means that more likely than not, right? So obviously nothing is 100% in our job, in our career. We just have to have articulable facts that more likely than not a crime has occurred for us to make that search. So if we suspect a crime has occurred, sometimes a crime doesn't always occur even though we suspect it does, we could still use it for that reason to determine if the crime has occurred or not. If there's no reasonable suspicion or probable cause that a crime has occurred, then we can't utilize this system.
You can't, because it will stop you. It'll say you can't go past this part of the software until you enter a crime.
We'll have to enter a case number or a crime statute in the reason for the search. So if there's reasonable suspicion that a crime has occurred, we would put that crime statute that's our reasonable suspicion to make that search. We can't, just search speeding vehicle or whatnot. Our policy prevents us from doing it. We have to have a reason, and that reason entails a case number or a crime statute.
The policy prevents you, but not the software.
The software, we could put something, we'd have to put that crime in there, that statute or the reasonable suspicion, and it returns it to us right away. The transparency portal will tell the public what we're searching to keep it honest.
Okay, thank you.
So in other words, if you had an officer that was continually trying to look for stuff and he was continually putting in, that would put a red flag on that officer.
So if there's a crime and you want to continuously update it to search the same crime, same vehicle, that's not abnormal because you're seeing if it passed by one of the cameras within the jurisdiction. So yeah, we keep a close eye on it. We use a transparency portal and monitor it to do the best that we can for it.
Yeah, I guess now I'm getting confused by the questions. If we are searching for something on this, we have to put a crime case or a crime. That's the transparency portal, which he's going to explain. It shows you what we're doing with these cameras. Nothing's in private. That's the transparency part. We're not doing anything subversive. We're not trying to look for people. We are using it as an alerting tool for criminal activity. Or if we have something that happens here, we can enter that information into the system so it will alert on our cameras, or it will alert on other city cameras as well. Does that help?
Yeah.
We can tie into other cities' cameras. That's an important part of this. All right, you want to open it up and just run through how it works, how we use it, that way everybody can see it. We do have our policy, which is on the website as well. We have to post that as part of it, so it's on the same page.
Do you want to show the,
Do you have the mouse?
so, yeah. And then I think,
Oh, there it is.
yeah, it's kind of confusing because you have to.
Okay, so this is the transparency portal on our city website. It's available to look at by anybody with internet access. And if you go down, it goes over a lot about what we talked about today. So the data retention is 30 days. Number of cameras that we have out there are 17. It tells you what's detected, what we explained, what's not detected. These are the other agencies in the state of California that have external access, that have flock cameras. So if any one of these agencies that you look online enter a plate into flock and that car comes into Carmel, we'll be notified of the agency and why it's being alerted on. So in the past 30 days, Flock has identified 153,712 vehicles passed by one of our Flock cameras. In the past 86 days, the past 30 days, there's been 86 hot list cars. So that includes stolen vehicles, vehicles with lost or stolen license plates on them, or manually entered vehicles that alerted on our Flock system. So I think there was 29 searches in the last 30 days when I put this PowerPoint together a couple weeks ago. It's updated from the past 30 days. There's been 19 of them. And if you go down, you could look on this link. It's coming up on this one. And it tells you the 19, or there's 20 of them now, of the searches that we've done. So it's not coming up on this right one.
You have to like drag it to the other side.
Okay.
Mouse at right now. There it is.
So the last 20 searches in the crime statute 44 is a petty theft, shoplifting, a case number. I don't know what the crime was alleged in that one. These are some other case numbers. 10851 is stolen vehicle, hit and run, stolen vehicle. 594 is vandalism, a prowler call, and 594. So some of these, it tells you the date right down here. These are the cameras these are the ID numbers of the officers that did the search. And these were the numbers of it puts a partial license plate number of the vehicle that was associated with that crime of why the officer did the search. Those are the last 2 or 3 numbers of that license plate, or 4 down here. And I don't know why there's 2, 3, or 4 numbers in different ones.
I've got a question, sorry.
Yes. Let me hand you this.
Thanks. On the other page that you previously were on, you said that there are 17 cameras in use, but I thought we halted the program, so we weren't using anything other than the original 6.
I don't know how many cameras we have in. I think it's like 5 or 6.
Yeah.
We have 17 cameras in the system. I don't know if it's hitting on all 17.
Yeah, I know some of them are turned off. They're not active. There's only the 6 that are active. I think the 17 is the number that the city holds the rights to or owns.
But we are not using those right now. Is that correct?
No, there's only 6 that are active
Just the
right
perimeter.
now. Yeah, not all 17.
Okay, just the perimeter ones. Okay, thank you.
Before we go on, does anybody have any questions about this?
Let me hand you the microphone.
Why are we not using all the cameras we have? That's costing us money. I'm sorry. Why aren't we using all the cameras that are installed?
We placed the program on hold, so we didn't complete the installation. We want to make sure before we install these cameras that the community's okay with it, and we have them in the locations and the setup that we want. So rather than have them set up, and a lot of it's the privacy issues. That's a lot of the issues. So we completely stopped with the installation.
It's unfortunate because the house right next door to us was being built and they had all their tools stolen the day after they started. Policemen knocked on our door and said, "Did you hear anything?" And I felt stupid. I said, "I've heard stuff, but I thought it was just kids, at 12 o'clock at night." Anyway, he saw that we had a doorbell system and I felt so bad because he said, "Did you get any pictures?" And I said, "We haven't installed it yet, so that's why."
Mayor White likes to say, a little bit of history here. And Councilmember Hardy was on the council when we approved the first round, and Paul and I were so concerned, not just about the aesthetics, but about the civil liberties issues. Will people feel like this is Big Brother or Big Sister watching? And we did a lot of public outreach and education, and there was silence in the community. So the community felt safe with the first 6 that we installed around the perimeter. And then when we came up, as Councilmember Dramoff just said, last April, a year ago April, we had this proposal, and we did not socialize it as thoroughly as we did. We put the item on the consent agenda. The council approved it. There wasn't pulled from consent. There were no comments from the community. And then there was some concerns. And as Councilmember Dramoff just said, that's when we halted the program. We did not install, we didn't do the full install of everything that we had purchased, and we didn't turn any more cameras on. And then the council again appointed the 2 council members you see here as part of an ad hoc to do the deeper dive with the community, do the analysis, and work with Chief Tomasi. We've had a couple of police chiefs, but thank goodness Chief Tomasi's back here to really provide us with his professional opinion about how many cameras that we need for optimal safety. And he's going to talk about that at the end. And then, as Councilmember Dramoff just said, ask those questions of the community about aesthetics, about coverage, about civil liberties that we want your opinion on. So that's a little bit of, again, Mayor White's, that's a little history.
Okay. Michael McWalters, go ahead.
The example that, thank you, the example that Sergeant Michael Bruno gave of the Fifth and Monteverde stolen car, and then you found it, the system was alerted, and then you found the car. My question is, if there was a prowler on Fifth and Monteverde, and it was in the middle of the night, and somebody called and said, I think there's a prowler over next door, can you turn the flock camera towards the house to see what's going on, or do you have to send a police officer out there? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. The cameras, we cannot manipulate or move the cameras at all. They're in a fixed position on the poles. So yeah, we cannot move the cameras.
But it could tell you about a car was driving away from that same car.
Yeah, the good thing in Carmel, there's not a lot of cars driving around between 2 and 3 in the morning. So that's probably why you would do the search to see is there a car coming and a car leaving. And so that was more likely than not the reason why that search was done at that location at that time.
Thank you.
Yep.
Did you have more, or was that the last?
No, that was the last. I think the next one's yours.
Okay, any other questions about the transparency portal?
I've heard that perpetrators have a gadget that blurs the photograph of their license plate. Is that true? That they have figured out how to blur the license plate on the car? Is there anything to that? Have you run into that?
The only thing I've heard of is license plate covers. They can get them tinted or like a reflective. That might help with that. Or take their license plate off.
That's illegal.
Correct, yes. Covers are illegal.
Yeah, I was reading, actually there's a technology, like for example, Veil.com, because I was reading about the license plate readers and it came up and it said people used to have some kind of flash photography that would make it so you couldn't read the infrared from the what do you call it, ALPR is the type of flock camera. License plate reader, and then now people have developed clear coating they put over the license plate to blur out the license plate. So of course, you know, criminals are trying to find ways to evade the license plate readers.
There's always things people are trying and doing to evade technology and the police. So this is an absolutely terrible map, but this is the only map I have of the locations of the camera sites. And as you can see, it's spread out all the way through town, all over town. The little red dots are the camera locations. Do you have the remote? Oh. So it leads us to the question, really, the number of cameras and what is the right number for us? You know, you look at comparison cities with 12 or 6 or 15. What's right for Carmel-by-the-Sea? I will tell you right now, it is a valuable tool for the police. As I explained before, hearing something over the radio and trying to memorize a license plate and a vehicle description is very difficult for an officer who's driving around and has 4 other things on their mind. This does the work for us. This system keeps Carmel safer. We have to get that in our minds. It's letting the police know when you have a criminal or criminal activity entering the city, or if it took place here, we can enter that information, not only for us, but for other cities to help prevent crime in their city or at least catch the person. It helps with our solvability rate. There's crime trends happening that is new, kind of new, right? Everybody knows what these theft crews are, robbery theft crews. I just saw yesterday, the day before, 19 people breaking into a jewelry store, overtaking the place and taking a bunch of jewelry. That's happening all over the Bay Area. That's happening in the cities.
Can you prosecute that? Are you able to prosecute that?
The question is, are we able to prosecute that? The theft crews?
Yeah, with Prop 47, can you prosecute those thefts?
On the amount, yes. Right? And if we can capture them, at least you can get the property back. Right? So they left in like 5 or 6 vehicles. Those vehicles are going through these camera systems, so it allows people to at least capture them. It's up to the DA whether they want to prosecute, but we still have a duty to apprehend. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chief. If I remember right, 2 years ago there was a smash and grab at 14 Jewelers, and it was 3 perps, 3 or 4. One got captured and is in jail, and the others got away. And this system, if it had been in place then, and they had driven a car with a license plate, and we picked up a license plate, much better chance we could have apprehended the others, who I don't believe have ever been caught. So that's one way I could see that this system could be really valuable.
We did have 6 perimeter cameras at that time. Yeah. So the 6 perimeter cameras were functional at that time. They were in place. They were in place.
Yeah.
The original.
He's asking, did you get a license plate for the jewelry grab? He was asking. And then I have a question.
I was working at the aquarium, so I have no idea. Michael, do you know?
Yes, so in that case, the suspects took the license plates off their vehicle, and that's how they were captured as well, on the highway leaving the area with no license plates on their car. And the highway patrol captured them. What we learned later is they did it in 2 cars. They committed the crime in 1 car, but they fled in 2 cars. So that's why 1 got away, and we ended up capturing 1.
Getting my steps in.
Thanks for remembering. I had a question. So the license plate reader was helpful when there was a crime committed at a jewelry store, and then they saw them when they came out without the license plate, so that identified them. So there was not a license plate reader at the jewelry store. It was coming in at the entrance or the exit. Thanks. He's nodding.
Great. Okay. Let me continue with this. So again, these cameras are great for also missing persons and stolen vehicles, as you saw. The perimeter cameras, yes, those have been a very valuable tool. We're all aware of that. We've had some pretty good crimes solved by those. We had one down on Scenic and 13th, and I assure you, if we didn't have the camera system hooked up then, that would still be an unsolved case. That was a attempted murder and a rape of a subject. So if we didn't have the cameras, that would not be a solved case right now. So the cameras are still valuable.
Missing persons example, like, do you mean somebody with Alzheimer's or somebody kidnapped?
It's either, right? So the white van we saw earlier was a kidnapping. So that's a way it can be entered. It could be a missing person. It could be a silver alert, dementia. Yeah, that's a silver alert. Correct. So that vehicle we would want to be looking for, and it would alert us, and it would tell us what we're dealing with, which is really nice. So we're handling it appropriately. Keep taking it. So I will share this with you because that's who I am. We are very fortunate to be in Carmel-by-the-Sea, right? We're tucked away. We may not have a lot of crime, but we do have crime. We have to get out of the mindset that there is no crime here, because there is. And if you feel safe here and you feel like this is paradise, that's because we're doing such a great job. But there's a couple other reasons for that, and I will tell you. We're tucked away off the highway. There's 3 ways off this peninsula, right? Highway 1, Highway 68, Carmel Valley Road. That's it. When we have a major crime here, if we get a good vehicle description, the person doesn't normally make it off the peninsula. We have a system in place that started around 2000. It was about 2006. It's called ROPE, and I can never remember the name, so I wrote it down. It's Roadblock Observation Plan or Enforcement. That is for every agency. When they have a major crime that occurs, they put out over the radio that they're activating ROPE. And each agency has a specific place they go to monitor the highway and the exit routes off the peninsula. That's important. We catch people. We had a jewelry store robbery several years ago where they went in, they tied up the owner and a customer, and they took a whole bunch of jewelry, about $200,000 worth of jewelry. Luckily, somebody broke free. I think it was the store owner, broke free and got the license plate of the vehicle and a great description. That car didn't make it past Imjin Road in Marina, and they were stopped, and we got the jewelry back. So that's a nice system we have. Flock would help with that, but also the unknown coming in, or the BOL, be on the lookout, that we didn't get. Change in policing. Policing techniques have changed. This is technology that helps us. Trust me, as you said, the criminals have technology. We have to try to keep up. If we're not using technology like this, we're behind the times. If every other city is using this technology and we aren't, guess what that makes us? A target. If you're a criminal, would you rather go to a city with these cameras or without? So you're kind of like, these are a valuable tool for us. How about staffing? We shared in the budget meeting that we're down officers. We're down 4 officers. That's less people patrolling, less people out driving around. These replace an officer. This is $70,000 a year instead of a patrol officer driving around. These are eyes and ears, or eyes for us. Here's an example of the peninsula. When you look at PG, Monterey, Seaside, Delray Oaks, Sand City, and us, and now these cameras are not accurately placed because I think I have one out in the ocean there in Monterey, but it gives you an idea of the web, the network that we can create through these cameras. If something happens here or something happens in another city, they're going to pass by a camera, and it's going to hit on one of these cameras, and we're going to be able to capture them. That's how the kidnapping person was actually captured, the one that happened in Seaside. They came through our city, hit on 2 of our cameras, and they got caught. Without those cameras, who knows?
Because you can track them, right? So you see that they're going southbound on a street, and then they pass another camera, so you know what direction they're going.
Correct. They came in off Carpenter, we know that. They left on San Carlos, and they went through Rio Road. We know that, yes. So, number of cameras. It's really what's a good balance for our city. That was the first point that you brought up, council member, is how many. You compare it to other cities, and we have 30. That's a good number of cameras for this town. It's really a decision that we need to make. The more cameras you have, probably the safer you are. But what are we comfortable with? What's the expense? What do we want, right? We have a hand up in the back. A couple hands. I'll stop. You can read that. You can ask some questions. I'm going to go back here. Her hand was up first.
I just want to make a point with Oakland when you say that there was a Forbes magazine writer who wrote a letter, an article about Flock. And he lives in Oakland, California, and he said that they've had license plate readers there for more than a decade, and they have not seen a decrease in crime. And if you've seen Oakland lately, it's not an example of what you would want to have. Also, he pointed out that Flock uses misleading marketing tactics, and the affluent town of San Marino in Los Angeles County saw a dramatic decrease in burglaries. But, well, that's what they were telling people, but there was actually a spike in residential burglaries. So this author was saying from Forbes magazine, he said, sorry, I got it mixed up. Oh, okay, sorry. He says, the level of law breaking that Flock is willing to commit in order to help law enforcement catch alleged criminals. According to the company, correspondence reviewed by Forbes, Flock has failed to obtain correct permitting for hundreds of camera installations, installing devices on infrastructure without prior DOT approval. Is a crime in Florida and South Carolina, and the company has also run into issues with Texas and Washington over its lack of permits. And they also don't do third-party testing with its claims. It said the Atlanta-based company has grown nearly 2,700% since 2020. According to a new report from Forbes, has come from the willingness to bend the rules in order to get their cameras installed and for tracking your every movement. Flock uses fallible artificial intelligence software to give the appearance to license plate number in the DOT database. Cops love Flock because they say it's less expensive than competitive systems from Motorola. I don't know, so I'm sorry, I'm not doing this very well. I'm not good at doing this type of meeting because I feel like I'm bringing up bad things about your technology, but basically there's questions about whether Flock is like telling the truth about how effective these cameras are and whether or not it really does prevent crime the way they're saying, because really it's a for-profit company and they're giving a sales pitch to police forces and they're giving a sales pitch to cities that this is going to be a great thing. But like the author pointed out, in Oakland, it really hasn't been great for Oakland having those license plate readers. I know they're doing 480 more, but.
Yep, thank you. I don't think any of us or myself would ever compare us to Oakland because of the crime rate and what's happening in the Bay Area. But again, we are a target here. We have high-end shops. We're an affluent community, and we have limited lighting. I mean, let's think about how we are a target. Again, we have natural things that help us reduce the crime. You also have an active police force that isn't going call to call to call like you see in other cities. So we are out there patrolling. We are out there running license plates on our own. We're out there checking to see who's out in our neighborhoods, you know, after midnight, who's driving around. We're doing all that to help keep you safe. These cameras are just a tool for us. Again, it's technology that helps us protect you. It's making our jobs a little bit easier and it's making you a little bit safer. But I get the concerns. I did not ask Flock to come to this for that reason. I don't want this to be a sales pitch for Flock. I want this to be a decision that's made between all of us and the council when it comes time as to what you want in your community. We work here to protect you, and we would love to have this tool to help protect you, but ultimately it's up to you what you want and how. But I'm telling you that this is a tool that will help us do our job to keep you safe. Okay, I got a bunch of hands on that one. Wait, let me go to Annie first. She had her hand up before you, Mayor.
So I have several things. First of all, I'm very familiar with software because when we had our hotels, we became computerized with software. So my question is, how often is the software updated? And when it is updated, is there a charge for that, an additional charge? Or is it just done on a regular basis with their new technology? So that's my first question. Do you want to answer that first, or?
Go ahead.
Okay. I have not been aware, I've been aware of the flock cameras mainly because of the woman that was attacked on Scenic and 13th. That's what brought it to my attention. And I felt very happy that that technology was there. I think that it's important to have some of that technology. I think in a village of our type, I think we have to be careful of how much of that we use, because a little bit of it around at the key places makes sense. If we start putting it like 30 more cameras, which I think the number was that I heard, that's a lot for this type of village and environment. So that would be my concern. I'm not against it. I don't have any problems with the worrying about, people watching me or anything. I'm just concerned about what it would do to the village. And the last thing is, who owns Flock? I'm concerned that Big Brother, whether it's Verizon or AT&T or T-Mobile or Sprint or whoever these big people are, that at some point they might come and take these over, and then they're going to add a bunch of their other things as well, because these are their materials. So that is another concern I have. And I guess I have one other concern. So this is on the consent agenda. I don't understand the consent agenda, because I feel that this community deserves transparency, and everybody deserves to know what's going on. And when you take issues like this that are very important issues that people are concerned about one way or another, and decisions are made before the community knows about it, and money is spent before the community knows about it, that's just uncomfortable for me. I just feel that the community needs to give input, and then we continue along to see what the majority of the residents want. And with these meetings that I've been attending, whether it's the affordable housing or the police station or flock cameras or the cell towers, I just feel that I don't know why how this all comes about seems, ass backwards. I just feel that it needs to comes from the community's aware, then there's a vote, then we give direction as to how we move forward. So that's my last.
Thank you. We'll get to those. Mayor or Carol or
Carolyn. Sorry, Mayor. Thank you. Carolyn Hardy here. A couple of things to address your question about what the consent agenda is normally they're non-controversial items that the staff puts on the agenda. Sometimes they miss the mark. They turn out to be of more interest. But anyone, including council members or anyone from the public, has a right to pull an item off consent for discussion. So always keep that in mind. Even though it's on consent, doesn't mean that's where it stays. And if you think it's important, ask them to pull it off to have public discussion. Otherwise, things are blanket approved because we think they're non-controversial. And a comment about my first thought when Alessandra was reading her introduction there, she was talking about comparisons of Hollister and one other city, and I'm thinking, that's apples to oranges. We are not like Hollister, we're not like other cities. We are a target. It can be, because we're 1 square mile, we have a lot of empty homes, 60% or so, and high-end stores. And when we approved those original 6 cameras, that was, I thought, one of the best things we decided on, and we had help in decision-making on where to place them by the police department. And my feeling is we need to give our police department the tools they need to keep us safe. And maybe 30 cameras is a little excessive, I don't know, but I would rather have input from the police department to say,
what streets are strategic and where do we need to place the cameras to protect. And it may be that 17's enough, 20, but I'm thinking if we can camouflage them more than having them on single pole stanchions. I don't know if we're buying the equipment or we're renting the equipment. But it seems to me, I haven't been paying real close attention to this, but it seems to me that we bought into Flock. That ship has sailed. That's my impression here. And, it sounds to me from our experience of our own police department that they say it's working for us. So I would disregard what some of this other information is from other cities where they say it's not working and they're trying to sell us something. Well, everybody's trying to sell us something. Anytime we're looking at cloud-based services or we're looking at software services, it's all sales pitch. But there's a reason there's so many cities that are using Flock. And if we can be part of a regional system, that makes good sense to me.
Okay,
Mayor.
Ken. I have to tell you, I am totally in supportive of this whole concept of flock cameras. If you had 5 or 7 police cars with patrolmen 24/7 driving around the city, I would bet you this walking stick, heavy duty bet, that the bad guys would learn real quick, stay the hell out of Carmel, because you've got a blanket of policemen there. And that's the way to solve it. Well, there's an awful expensive way to do it. How about the flock system? I don't care what the name of the company is or not. But I don't have a bit of problem with this, and if they get 30, I'm happy with that. And I think we need that. But there's one thing I want to talk to you that has nothing to do with the safety. It has basic principles in our city. And I'll tell you a story about once, a number of years ago, the newspapers came to the city 20, 30 years ago, and you'll probably remember. And they wanted to put those boxes on the sidewalks in the commercial district. Remember the boxes? Newspaper boxes. Some were pink, some were green, some were blue, advertising on the sides. And what happened, they would put their newspapers in, but those that were daily had to come every day, and it cost a lot of money to have somebody drive through and fill them. So they stopped doing it. But before they did, the people in the city said they're ugly as sin. They're really ugly. They don't add anything to Carmel. And so you guys got together and made a decision, came to a compromise. The newspaper people went along with this. And the companies that were putting the papers in there, they said, we'll cover them with wood. We'll put them in a cabinet with a nice shingle roof. They look nice. Some of those are still there today, right? Okay. Well, what happened was it cost too much to have a person come through 7 days a week, put papers in there. Newspapers stopped doing it. They went to grocery stores and hardware stores, etc. Because they changed. But we still have those there. So now I got to ask the question is, we got the flock cameras okayed by the council on a consent agenda to go ahead and put them up. Okay, that's what I understand. Didn't go to planning department. Didn't go to planning department. In this city, I'm going to tell you, I feel so strongly, things like this should go to the planning department. They could have put them on wooden poles, clad the pipe with the wood, put a little bird house on top since they don't turn, focus it, and people say, aren't those cute? And they're saying, oh my God, they're ugly. You got to use the process in the city, and you got to protect everything. Everything. If it costs with design standards for a house, it's there for a purpose. A fence, it's there for a purpose. And we just can't run a city with staff going to council and say, what do you think about this new whiz-bang idea? You just can't do it. And I don't think this population in the city is going to put up with that. So we need to learn a lesson on this. I just went through some history.
Yeah, no, thank you, Mayor. Ken.
A short while ago, Chief, you mentioned that we were down 4 officers, and I was wondering if this could be a time that we can talk about the reduced policing model, because not everyone is aware of that. It was a 3-year contract the previous council got into in 2022, where we did reduce the number of officers in exchange for giving them more responsibilities and higher pay. But now, because of overtime, it's costing $250,000 to $280,000 per officer. And so when you say we're down 4 officers, is that because of the reduced policing model, or is that because we have unfilled positions, or can you explain more where our situation is on the number of officers?
Yeah, just for clarity, and we're down 3 positions because of the contract negotiations. It was reduced by 3. I also have 1 vacancy that I haven't been able to fill. That's been vacant since we did this reduced model to fill vacancies. Just some history. I'm trying to get to Ian.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to, sorry, Ian. Sorry, I pulled rank, Ian, sorry. No, I want to assume the responsibility, what Mayor White just said. I think we did drop the ball as a council to not have this go to Planning Commission. I think that was our fault. It was, when we voted on that, it was on consent because the 6 cameras that Councilmember Hardy and I voted on was so well received, and they did so much good for the city that we thought this was, quote unquote, a slam dunk. No problem. The Chief Watkins at the time came to us, told us about it, and everybody just raised their hand and said, yeah, it's a great idea, more the merrier, as many as we can, because we can catch these guys, because that's the feeling that we had. What we should have done was pulled it off consent and said, hey, this is a great idea for all these cameras, but it needs to go to Planning Commission to know where we were going to place them. So I'm going to assume the responsibility for that. I'm also going to blame Chief Tomasi because he wasn't here. Because if we had a new chief at the time that was only here for a few months, and he wasn't as prepared as Chief Tomasi would have been, because I think Paul would have said, no, wait a minute, we need to, before we go put out these poles with solar panels and these things, we need to go through Planning Commission. So now we're at a point where we have these cameras, and it's a matter of how many we're going to have, and the aesthetics of them. Alessandra and I both did a drive around, and I think we both pretty adamantly agreed that the single poles with the solar panel on top was not a look for the city. That was just something that neither one of us were okay with. Now, the placement and the amount, that's really where we really need the city or the citizen input. But as far as the other stuff goes, thanks a lot, Paul, for not being here.
Okay, I'm going to Ian.
All right, thank you for holding this listening session. I apologize that I was late, and maybe these questions have already been addressed, but I got a few different questions for you. So I understand these are cameras. Can these cameras be equipped with facial recognition technology down the line? That's one question. The other question, too, I have is about the company Flock. And when we just look at corporate history around the world, tech companies, we look at Boeing, there's a lot of unscrupulous behavior with a lot of different companies. I don't know anything about Flock, right? But given the power of these surveillance systems, especially if this camera system can be upgraded by simply upgrading the software to facial recognition, I think the potential for abuse is very high, right? And I just have very limited trust for any given company. And I just don't see how we could ever have the protections in place that would protect our privacy to a level that I would want, not only as a person who lives in Carmel-by-the-Sea, but as an American, right? So that's one thing. The other thing I'm concerned about too is, one point I want to make is I'm very glad you're back, because you're the chief of police. I think I'm delighted that Chip figured out how to bring you back from the aquarium. The fish don't deserve you. But part of the reason why I'm glad you're back is because I have seen you to be a competent and ethical person, right, and law enforcement officer. And so I'm very comfortable having you in charge of our police force. That gives them peace of mind. And, you know, and I have, over the last, you know, dozen or so years, I have seen a very uneven, we've had uneven leadership in various positions in our city. And I would not be comfortable if this system, especially if equipped with facial recognition, were in charge. And I think, Bobby, you hear me on that, right? You know, so there's just a lot of trust hurdles for me to get over as a citizen here. I don't, these are cameras and the cameras can read license plates, I don't see why these cameras could not eventually be able to recognize faces. And that concerns me, you know, and I don't know what Flock would do with this information if they had it. I'm also concerned about the outcome of our presidential election this come November. I'm concerned about equipping our communities, not only here, but, you know, around the country with surveillance systems like this that are very sophisticated. And I'm concerned about the future of our democracy in our country and us laying the groundwork for these kinds of surveillance systems now. You know, no matter what, we shouldn't have these things distributed in the residential neighborhoods. I myself at some point would like to see the city begin to regulate and control personal private security systems that are often directed out into the right of way. Because I'm walking down the street, I don't want to be surveilled. You know, it's just my rights as my right to privacy, my expected right to privacy. So yeah, I've got a lot of questions. I think that it was a good move to install the cameras several years ago at the entry points to the village. That made sense, especially if they're only reading license plates. But to have 30 cameras, you know, I'm concerned. And technically, I don't see why they could not be eventually upgraded to read faces. So anyway, those are my questions and my concerns. And again, I'm glad you're back. And these are my comments.
Thank you, Ian. We're heading to this side. And what's up first?
Oh, yeah. Thank you. I appreciated Ian's remarks, and I'm focusing on the cost of this, and if the updating that happens whenever Flock or the other companies that we might consider, we have a budget. I'm more interested, frankly, that we have a police department that has everything that they need for their safety. And if that means changing this number to 30 back to 6 and seeing where that gets us in another 6 months or 2 years and make a decision that way. But to run in and say, we're going to take a contract and we are open to you changing the parameters of this contract, we are stuck with that contract, and I'm not liking that too much. I have one on my street. When I walk up here to go to these meetings, I walk right by it. Do I feel safer? Somewhat, but I do see a lot of people running through the stoplight, and we're not capturing that, and I don't see too much in the pine cone about that. But it's the money that I'm concerned about. And safety. Those two things, we got to talk about those way in the beginning and then make these other decisions after we're secure enough with our budget and the condition of our police department. So that's where I am on it. Thank you.
I have a quick factual question, then I want to give you my real question. When you, again, I think when you all were presenting your examples, you had mentioned the Monteverde and 6th camera more than once as a way that you captured a couple things or made progress on a couple things. Were those same license plates captured also by the perimeter system on those particular moments, those particular days? And if not, why not? That would be a question. But I don't know why, you know, they're headed out of town or they're headed into town. Why do we have to capture them in the residential neighborhood if we have the perimeter secured? So, and then that leads me to the perimeter camera system, which was a different company, now is run by the Flock software. Is that correct? Is that what I heard you say? Or it's been updated, the software, or maybe it's still two separate softwares? Okay. So my understanding is that when things are really cheap, we have to ask ourselves, where's the product? And usually the answer is, we're the product. So that's why Facebook is free, that's why Google is free, because they're collecting information about you. The Flock system, I don't know if they've been accused of this, but many of their rivals have been accused of selling this information that they get from fingerprinting cars to folks who have car loans out and have been remiss, or people who might be in the market for a new car, things like that, crazy things. But I think that it may not be any coincidence that I'm agreeing here with Ian. We're about the same age. We might have a healthy skepticism of what tech companies are after. I think we're in a little bit over our heads if the retirement community that we live in feels like this is not a danger at all. I think we are talking about a very abusive corporate model. That doesn't mean Flock in particular, although I believe someone here mentioned that they are the only company of this type that has not submitted its cameras to independent third-party evaluation for its effectiveness, which no one can understand. Why not, if they're so effective? They are cheap. They are the cheapest. And they're on an incredible juggernaut of a spree of corporate growth, 26 or 700% in the last couple years. So I just, in my line of work, which is design and construction, every so often a product comes along, seems too good to be true, everybody buys it, and then 3 years later, or 10 years later, when it's weathered a little bit, we have to go through a bunch of lawsuits. There are lawsuits already against Flock and other companies for Fourth Amendment illegal search and seizure. These are dragnet type crime fighting services. In other words, you don't have to be a criminal to have your license plate captured, obviously. And you have these certain sort of ameliorative factors of 30 days saved, et cetera. But this is a cloud-based system, which means that you don't have control of the data. Flock has control of the data. I think we don't have policies in place about this yet. This, as Bobby very sweetly confessed, this was kind of came out of nowhere. It got pushed through, or sort of accidentally consent agendas. We don't have a council-discussed policy on how to handle this information. We don't have a policy about what our views are as a city about surveillance in general. And my understanding is that Flock counts on that their growth rate is so high because they're trying to actually sell this product before municipalities get that legal system in place. All we have right now is the U.S. Constitution. So I just, if you want my vote on where to put this stuff, perimeter only. If we haven't sealed the perimeter, and my council, by the way, unlike Carolyn's, said no, N-O to any of them. Carolyn's then said yes to the perimeter. The perimeter, it seems to me, is as far as we should go, especially without having in place these jurisdictional policy-related, who's going to have the data, how do we control the data, why is it in the cloud, why is it Flock? I would rather take this step by step. That's my view. Thanks.
No, thank you.
Perimeter, if you could answer about Monteverde and 6th, and whether those license plates were caught by our other system.
Oh, can you answer that, or?
So the current system is, there's areas still, there's still roads and areas in and out of town that don't have the camera system. That car was only captured at Monteverde and 6th, and also I think that could be a reason why is not all the cameras are turned on. Only the certain few of them are, but there's always a way, there's still ways in and out of town off the highway.
The whole perimeter, I'm sorry to interrupt, but that is the question. I think you're asking us exactly where to put them. Why are they only in some perimeter locations and not actually sealing the perimeter? Yes, thank you.
So, since I was part of the history of the first camera system, It took a lot of these meetings, not a lot, it took a couple of these meetings just to gain your trust in me and the department in putting these in. Now, the cameras we have on the perimeter are not cloud-based, so I really appreciate those comments. It's a camera system you might have on your house that you just monitor. It also did have LPR capabilities. Each of those cameras has a license plate reader that we could read license plates clearer than just a regular old home camera kind of system that it is. We picked those 6 locations because those are your primary 6 routes in and out of town. There are other alternate routes, which you can get to Highway 1 if you cut up Lobos and cut through Monterey and do all this. We didn't pick those. And the reason we didn't pick those was because we really were focused on the smash and grab groups coming in from the outside because they only know 1 or 2 ways into town. It's the main roads. So we set them up on the main roads. And that obviously has been very beneficial. Does it capture everybody? No. Could we put them on every single street leading in and out and create a perimeter around? Yes and no. There were challenges with those perimeter cameras as far as locations. We had to put them on PG&E poles. That took about a year to get approval to put those on PG&E poles. In fact, that incident on Scenic and 13th, had it happened 2 weeks earlier, that camera wouldn't have been on. That took us that long, and that was 2020, I think. That's how long it took us to get them installed. But what I'm saying is we could do a very good job of getting the perimeter. We might have some gaps in there because of the power poles, because of the authorization to put them on certain poles, things like that. Yeah. And one more. Once you start getting into these smaller streets, now you're butting up to next to somebody's house. And that was a big concern back then too, is I don't want this thing right outside my house because of that fear that was brought up by Mr. McWalters about can we turn them? No, we can't turn those either, so let's kill that before we go. Okay, a couple more questions. And then I can make a quick recommendation, but there are some very good points brought up today.
All right, thank you for giving me a second chance of this. I think that the perimeter only would be a good thing, as per Victoria's point and your comments just now. I think the other thing too is with Flock or any company, could we cancel the contract on a dime and say get these cameras out of here? You know, or be like, nope, you're on. Those cameras are staying for the next 18 months. You know, so that would be another thing. The third criteria, I think, because what I sense here is the city is continuing to develop its policy around this. I think that basically any data collected should remain in-house, right? You know, so it's like maybe there's a DMV connection for running license plates or whatever you need to do. But I don't want to have a private corporation having unfettered access to our video feeds in the town, right? Because God only knows what they do with it. Google says, or like these other tech companies say, oh, we only do this and this and this and this, right? Or incognito mode's really incognito mode. Oh, actually, it wasn't really incognito mode. That kind of thing. So I think that it'd be a good baseline policy is that video captured in town remains only in town, doesn't go up to the cloud. I think it'd be a good baseline to capture. And again, I think perimeter only would be good.
Paul, I have a question about that.
Okay, we'll go right around here.
The question was asked, who owns Flock? It's venture funded. They've raised 5 rounds of venture funding, serious money. The last valuation was about $4 billion before money. They are, so therefore privately held. They're not public yet. Their ambition is to go public, of course. And what bothers me, I'm all for license plate readers. I think license plate readers, traditional ones, have the kind of value you're talking about. What I'm worried about with this particular company is it's clear you're not going to restrict the data they capture. You're dreaming if you think you'll restrict their use of that data. You will not. Their whole business model is to install these systems really cheap, make the business proposition irresistible, like red light cameras. You can't resist. But they will then have the data, and they'll sell it to everybody who will buy it. So they are building a nationwide mass observation system. And we've all, if you've been paying attention, you've been reading about what's happened in China with facial recognition and all that. all of a sudden you can't get a job, but you don't know why. And I share your concern about the next election and the perilous state of our democracy. So I personally think, if you can find a system that will read license plates to serve the purposes of halting crime or finding a stolen car, have at it. This system, I think, is dangerous. And I just urge caution. The ACLU has put out a couple of very thorough white papers about this. And I'm not a lefty, I'm not a commie, pinko, bedwetter fag. I just think this is really a time to pay attention. And I'm a veteran of 40 years in Silicon Valley. And a lot of great things come out of Silicon Valley. And when I started there 25 years ago, I thought 80% of it was good behavior. I'd now say it's 55% tops. There's a lot of scumbags in Silicon Valley that have a lot of money and have made a lot of money for a lot of people. Now, that's the only measure. Sign up. But I think it would serve our citizens really well to support the police efforts to find a system that will track license plates. But I think this system is dangerous. It's my opinion.
Bye.
Where do you go? Surprise. I just really wanted to say that I'm really glad this was taken off the consent agenda. So whatever city council members did pull it, I really appreciate it, because those cameras kind of just popped up in the neighborhoods with no information. And I know other cities had public hearings before they were installed. So I'm glad we are where we are. And for me, I understand the issues of surveillance, but for me, it's having the clutter in our community. I worked for 3 years trying to keep cell towers from proliferating from multiple companies, and to have the flock cameras just all over without asking where they go and where they're necessary, I think is really important, and that's what it's come back to. So I really appreciate that. And I think that I really like the perimeter. Makes sense. I didn't understand that it's not, to me, I feel like we only have a couple exits. There's maybe 3 to Highway 1 and 1 to Pebble Gate. So I'm not understanding where these other perimeter holes are. They're secret ones. Okay. So I'd like to look at those first before any more in the residential or the commercial district, because we have cameras on our businesses that can be downloaded to the police, I understand. We have personal conspicuous cameras on our doorbells in our houses that people can share with the police. So I would like to talk all of that out.
Staying in the back row. Oh, sorry.
Well, I'm really glad that Ian and Victoria agree with me, because I really need support. I think that we didn't talk about how the ACLU says that they can be wildly inaccurate, and that 10% of the time they do track people that are not guilty or that not criminals, and oftentimes they're held at gunpoint face down, and there's been all these incidences and there's lawsuits about that. And so it does open the city up to liability for lawsuits if if they mistakenly think that somebody's license plate, they read it incorrectly or whatever, and then people get held at gunpoint. It's traumatizing for people. And also I wanted to bring up that they say that they don't use facial recognition, but I did read that they can use facial recognition technology on recorded footage. So after the fact, they can use it. Is that correct?
The police or flock? The police or flock? I don't either. I think it's illegal for us to use facial recognition as law enforcement in California. So we don't use it. No. Okay. A couple more questions.
Before we go home to dinner, would you like to hear a story about your police department? Huh? Yeah. It comes from Don Fuselier, who was chief of police of this city for quite a while. Lovely man. And he tells a story, and it's a true story, that in the evening patrol, the car was circling through the city in a regular route, and this strange car kept passing the patrol car. So the patrol car didn't think too much about it the first time. He drove down into town, and it went going the other way across the street from the patrol car. Well, 5 or 6 times this police officer, this car kept going through the city. And he thought it was really strange. And at the same time, there was a gang who was burglarizing parts of the peninsula, but Carmel and Pebble Beach were the ones they hit quite a bit. It didn't cross his mind, but he said, he stopped the car, turned the lights on, stopped the car, and said, want to see the IDs, and you have a problem. And his responses back to him and the way they acted in the car, very nervous. He said, do you mind if I search the car? And they opened the trunk, and it's just full of stuff they'd stolen, full of stuff. So they called for backup, and I think we had 2 cars around that time. Took him into the police department, talking to him, and finally the officer said, well, why were you circling around the town? This is about 2-3 hours tonight you were circling around the town. And the guys in the car that they had handcuffed said, we couldn't find our way out of town.
Thanks, Ken. I don't know if you want to comments, and we can wrap it up with a couple thoughts. I do. First of all, thank you all. I mean, really good comments. Yeah, I really, this is why I love Carmel. Let's be honest. I mean, we have a lot of smart people in this town. We always say it, but to hear the thought that went into this, and you're all planned, you're all prepared to talk about it. I do appreciate the security part of it, and if we're putting something on the cloud, that's important. We want to make sure we have control of that. I'm relieved to know that you still trust us. You just don't trust the corporate. So again, it was a big part of getting the original cameras, is that trust, and I think we still have it because we've never violated that trust with any of you, and we won't do that as your police department. We do have accountability with this for us, but I appreciate the comments on we can't control everybody. I had a couple recommendations which I came up prior to this meeting as kind of my thoughts. First one was to begin the flock cameras on the perimeter. Let's just put them on the perimeter like we talked about. That's been so valuable for us over the last 7 or 8 years. Let's do that. Let's upgrade what we have, because what we have is getting dated and it needs to be replaced. Then we take a look at the business district and the business district only. That's our biggest target. We have a lot of high-end shops. We get hit every year multiple times. Middle of the night smash and grabs, robberies, thefts. We do get hit here. So my original idea is to add 10 to 17 inner perimeter cameras. No cameras in residential area except for the 6 in the perimeter. I think that helps protect the residential area. Look for hardwiring options in as many locations as possible. Light poles, PG&E poles, eaves of businesses, and then solar only in areas where no other options available, because that will reduce the size. These cameras are about as big as this microphone and a little bit wider. We can mount those. They're a lot of times you can't see them if they're on a light pole anyway, but that's my thought. Then, to go above and beyond that, have the police department report yearly on the camera use and how they've been successful, and include which cameras are most successful. We may find that we don't need cameras in certain areas because they're not doing anything or wasting our money. So a yearly report back to the community on the effectiveness of these cameras. Now, I'm not opposed to looking at a whole new company that doesn't use the cloud base and we could put it on a server. I have no issue with that at all. That's something I think we should also consider out of fairness. But that would be my recommendation either way you decide. 10 to 17 cameras downtown. We have a lot of light poles that we could probably mount these on, and then the perimeter, hit that pretty solid and make sure we have it creates a gated community for us, essentially. And that was my recommendation before this. Yeah.
You can put it on there.
And any polls go through planning commission.
Correct. Any pole that has to be installed goes through the planning commission, and is wood.
wanted to add to my comment. It's not going to be free to have those on the PG&E poles. And it's time to get them down and cleaned and whatever they have to do. Let's make sure we haven't forgotten about that. It's a cost.
With the PG&E poles that we have them installed on now, it is free. We have an agreement with PG&E to put them on there. And then with this, the company that mounted them, they come out twice a year or as needed to clean them. That's part of the contract itself. What was I adding? Oh, the Planning Commission.
And I wrote down the questions. You'll write responses.
Correct. We have written down all the questions that we haven't answered, and I will email and get responses to all those as well.
So there's a policy that is missing a data handling policy line item of some sort, so that's more clear and more shared at the community level.
Correct.
With the continuance of flock, but there's the other option if we're going to do something different.
I think that would come out in the staff report.
And for clarity, we do have a policy on ALPR use. It's a police policy as part of our manual, which we have posted on the website as well. On that transparency portal, you can read our policy on how we use it, what we do with the data and all that. That is a police department policy, but you're looking, I heard a suggestion for more of a broader city policy on that. Okay.
I just right now wanted to say thank you so much to Ian, Victoria, Joe, and Christy for speaking out on civil liberties, because it seems like that's been forgotten in a lot of this discussion, and it's all just talking about safety, and that's it's a huge concern. It's very vital, and we have to think about what's happening. The next thing is the facial recognition, and the next thing, and the next thing. And this is a for-profit company, and it's a very aggressive company. I mean, when you just look in the past less than half a decade, how many cities they've gotten these cameras in, and they want to sell as many as they can get in each city. And I don't like the way everything that happened with the consent agenda. It was the marketing materials from Flock. They were very aggressive, and we were told, act now. It was like, this offer, if we don't immediately sign it, the camera went up from $2,500 to $3,000. So we were pressured in a way. And frankly, that's not right. And I'm glad and grateful that we're having this pause and this sort of do-over, so to speak, and that the community is involved, and this is how it should have been originally. So thank you all for everyone who did come out and speak. I do agree with Nancy and Victoria that we do need a citywide policy for data and this kind of thing in the future. It's something that we haven't thought about in the past, and it's very important to have. So I hope we can add that as well in the recommendations. I just have two questions real quick, and I do support the idea of the perimeter. That's key, because otherwise it's overkill. Let's face it, if you have one on one block and 2 blocks later you have it 30 seconds later that the car drove by, we get the big picture, which is that they have to go in and out of the community, and we will track them at the perimeter. That's the key. Otherwise, it really can get to be overkill. And I also would support looking into a new company rather than Flock, because I do have concerns with them and how they operate and what they are doing with this information. But I just want to get something clear, because I was told that the program was halted, but yet, Sergeant Bruno, you said that we used information from Monteverdi and 6, so that's one of the new locations. So which one is it? Have we halted it, or are we using them, and have we been using them over the past year?
On the initial install, they installed 5 or 6 cameras. Those are running. Yeah, we halted the installation and the hookup of the remaining cameras. So we've had a few of the cameras that have been running since we started this.
Okay, I wasn't clear on that. I don't know if the community was clear on that.
Okay, I think they are now. Sorry if there's any confusion on that.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay, well, with that, I just want to say thank you to all. It was important to hear all of your voices. Everybody brought up some really good points and it's stuff that I didn't think of, and now I'm afraid to walk by a Tesla because I don't know what kind of information they're going to be sending Tesla company. And so, but thank you all for all the good input, and this is great. This is what ad hoc committee is all about, and for us to learn more, and I think the chief got some good information, and thank you very much for coming, Mr. Bruno, Officer Bruno, Sergeant Bruno. And anyways, thanks all. And Chip, Brandon, anybody? You guys have anything? Sergeant, anything? Okay, Nova? Okay, thank you, everybody.